Claire was still giggling when her hand slid across Greg's thigh under the table. The sound of her wedding ring clinking against his whiskey glass was the only thing louder than her laugh. Martin saw it. Saw everything. Right in his own dining room. The house he built brick by brick while Claire took time to figure herself out. "I swear, if you two flirt any harder, the curtains are going to catch fire," Martin said, trying to lace his voice with humor. But it came out dry. Tired. Claire didn't miss a beat. She turned to him with that smirk she used when she thought she was smarter than everyone in the room. "The door's right there, Martin. You don't have to stay." Greg laughed like it was some inside joke. Like they were all in on it. Martin stood. Calmly. No raised voice. No slam of fists. Just a slow, deliberate movement of a man who'd seen enough. He grabbed his coat from the chair behind him, buttoned it with precise fingers, and looked at the two people who used to mean everything to him. "Thanks for making things clear," he said, voice smooth as polished steel. Claire rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic." But Martin wasn't being dramatic. He was being final. He walked out into the cold without looking back. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't ask for an explanation. He didn't even shut the door hard. Just that soft, controlled click that sounded more like a full stop than a period. Out on the porch, the November wind hit him like a slap. But inside, there was no chaos. Just a quiet clarity humming beneath the betrayal. This wasn't heartbreak. This was war. And Martin had been planning for it without even realizing. It's funny how betrayal doesn't always come as a thunderclap. Sometimes, it shows up with red lipstick on someone else's shirt sleeve and laughter that doesn't include you anymore. And here's the thing. They thought that moment belonged to them. That Martin walking out was the climax. The moment he gave up. But that moment, that was the prologue. Most people stop watching when the husband walks away. They should really stick around for what happens after. And speaking of sticking around, 97% of people listening right now aren't subscribed. It takes half a second to do, but it motivates the team behind these stories 100 times more. And trust me, this one's just getting started. As Martin slid into his truck, he didn't turn on the engine right away. He just sat in silence, listening to the wind whip through the oak trees along the edge of the yard. That yard he mowed every Sunday, even when his back screamed at him. He looked down at his phone. One message from his assistant. She confirmed. 9:30, corner table. Perfect. He put the truck in gear and drove, not home, but east, past the grocery store where Claire used to send him at midnight for organic oat milk, past the florist where he'd spent way too much trying to keep a dying marriage alive with tulips and last-minute apologies. He drove 2 towns over, to a little wine bar tucked between a law firm and a yoga studio. Walked in, sat down, and waited. At exactly 9:29, a woman in a black blazer walked in. She wasn't flashy. No designer handbag. No loud perfume. Just confidence. Like a woman who knew things, important things. She sat down across from him and extended her hand. "Mr. Randall, I've been looking forward to this." He shook it. "Likewise." She pulled a leather folder from her tote and slid it across the table. Martin flipped it open. Neatly labeled tabs stared back at him. Joint assets. Gregory Shelton. Claire Randall. Timeline of activity. He didn't flinch. Didn't smile. Just nodded. Then he reached into his own coat pocket, pulled out a printed photo, and placed it face down on the table. "This one's for dessert." She glanced at it, but didn't turn it over. "Do I post it tonight?" Martin finally smiled. A slow, small thing, barely visible but dangerous in its stillness. "Yes," he said. "Let's begin." Martin wasn't the kind of man who made scenes. That's what they'd always counted on. Claire especially. She once told a friend on speakerphone, loud enough for him to hear, that Martin was too passive to ever walk away, let alone strike back. That line had lingered. Not like a wound, more like a key. So when he pulled into the side parking lot of Vespero Wine Room, 2 towns east of the betrayal still echoing in his dining room, it wasn't to drown sorrows or vent to a friend. It was an appointment, the kind that didn't need small talk. She was already there. Black blazer, low bun, dark lipstick. A presence more than a person. Rebecca Wyatt, recommended months ago by a colleague who once muttered, "If I ever needed to dismantle someone legally and sleep like a baby, I'd hire her." She rose as he entered, extended a hand. "Mr. Randall." "Martin," he corrected gently, shaking it. They sat in a corner booth. No menus. No need. She already ordered the wine, Chateauneuf du Pape, and a few things to pick at. This wasn't about dinner. She slid a leather folio across the table. I had my paralegal compile what we could find from public filings, joint assets, and a few interesting inconsistencies involving Mr. Shelton. Martin opened it. He didn't blink. The tabs were precise. Joint assets included 3 properties, one of which Claire thought he'd forgotten they still co-owned. Gregory Shelton outlined a timeline of his consulting payments, one of which had come directly from Martin's own business account, masked under vendor bonuses. Timeline was the most elegant dagger. It cross-referenced Claire's credit card charges with hotel records, GPS pings from Greg's car, and transaction receipts for spa visits, dinners, and a single tennis bracelet Claire claimed Martin had never bought her anything that nice. Martin ran his thumb along the folder's edge. This is thorough. Rebecca nodded. It's not personal, Martin. It's surgical. If you want emotional support, call a therapist. If you want results, we're already halfway there. He appreciated the directness. As a waiter placed down a slice of flourless chocolate cake between them, Rebecca poured a final half-glass of wine. She looked up. So, are we still posting that photo? Martin reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small 5x7. It wasn't digital. He'd printed it on purpose. It showed him at a table, same wine, same backdrop, raising a glass, smiling slightly. And next to him, Rebecca, poised, unreadable. No tags, no caption, just vibe. He turned the photo around for her to see. They'll recognize the setting. You're Greg's lawyer. Claire's seen you once. Won't remember where. But it'll itch. Badly. Rebecca studied it. And when Greg sees it, Martin leaned back, the faintest trace of satisfaction in his eyes. Then the fun begins. She smiled. Careful, Martin. That sounded like revenge. He shook his head. It's not revenge. It's documentation. They burned the house down. I'm just recording the smoke. Rebecca lifted her glass. To smoke signals. They clinked. Martin left the bar at 10:42 p.m. exactly 3 minutes after posting the photo. By the time he reached the gas station 5 miles from home, his phone lit up. Claire, 1 missed call. Greg, where are you? Call me. Urgent. Claire, who is she? Greg, you posted that on purpose? Claire, 11 more missed calls. Martin turned off the ringer. There would be no explanations. No confrontations. Not yet. This wasn't the collapse. This was the pull of the first thread. The photo wasn't staged. That's what made it perfect. Martin had waited until the lighting was just low enough to soften the edges, but bright enough to catch the gleam of Rebecca's glass mid-toast. No filters. No witty caption. Just 2 adults, dressed well, looking composed and content. He didn't tag anyone. He didn't even like his own post. Just uploaded it to Facebook, closed the app, and went to sleep with the kind of peace only a man with a plan could feel. By sunrise, the algorithm had already done its job. His sister commented first. Looking sharp, Marty. Who's the stunner? Then a co-worker from accounting. Wait, is that Vespero? Classy. By 9 a.m., there were 43 likes. 19 comments. Claire had seen it. Her first text came at 9:06. Claire, who is she? Then, at 9:07. Claire, Martin. Seriously, what is this? By 9:20, she was calling. Then again, and again. She'd never had to chase him before. That was the point. But the moment the spiral began wasn't Claire's first missed call. It was Greg's text at 10:32 a.m. Greg, where did you meet her? Martin stared at that one for a second longer. It had a different tone, less confusion, more calculation. He didn't reply. At 10:40, Greg called. Martin declined the call. At 10:44, Greg sent another message. Greg, that woman in the photo. I've seen her before. Is that Rebecca Wyatt? Now that was interesting. Claire's messages kept coming, piling up like junk mail in an overstuffed mailbox. Are you trying to humiliate me? So you just moved on? Just like that? You're not even going to talk to me? Is this revenge? Martin, answer me. By noon, 84 missed calls in total. Claire had gone from confused to panicked to furious in the span of 4 hours. But Martin didn't post the photo to get attention. He posted it to shake the ground under their feet. And it worked. Because while Claire was spiraling emotionally, Greg was unraveling strategically. He knew who Rebecca was. He'd hired her, for God's sake. She'd handled the restructuring of his logistics firm 2 years ago, didn't say much, just executed with lethal precision. And now she was clinking wine glasses with the one man Greg thought he'd permanently outmaneuvered. He called again at 12:17 p.m. Martin ignored it. Then a voicemail came through. Greg's voice, lower than usual, tight. "Listen, man, if that's who I think it is, we need to talk." Like, immediately. Martin played it twice. Smiled. Deleted it. He stepped out of his truck, tucked his phone into his jacket pocket, and walked into a hardware store for a spare key copy. Not because he needed it, but because he wanted a time-stamped receipt. It wasn't petty. It was documentation. Meanwhile, miles away, Claire was pacing barefoot through the living room, still in the robe she'd worn the night before when she laughed in his face. Her mascara was smudged now, voice hoarse from yelling at a phone that wouldn't answer. Greg had gone silent, too, after that last text. He hadn't returned her call in over an hour. For the first time, the thought crept in. What if we weren't as in control as we thought? The mood between them had shifted. Not with a scream, not with an accusation, but with one elegant photo, one dinner, one woman, one smile too calm to be casual. And for the first time, Claire realized Martin wasn't coming back. Not because he was broken, but because he was ready. Greg was pacing in his office, tie loosened, phone to his ear like it was a lifeline. The walls around him, lined with certificates, framed golf photos, and plaques from local business boards, suddenly felt like they were closing in. No answer. He redialed. Again, straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Rebecca Wyatt. I'm unavailable at the moment. Please leave a message and I'll return your call within." He ended it before the beep. Damn it, it was her. That elegant silhouette, the ice-cold smile, the composure. He'd known the moment he saw the wine glass in her hand. He remembered that hand. The same one that once pointed to a clause in a contract he'd tried to sneak through without full disclosure. She'd let it slide then. This once, she'd warned. "Don't make me regret it." He made her regret it. Now she was having dinner with Martin, toasting with him, and smiling. That meant something. That meant intention. He hadn't even told Claire yet. Part of him didn't want to. The other part was just trying to breathe. But Claire wasn't an idiot. She barged in just after noon, hair thrown into a messy bun, still in joggers and one of Martin's old hoodies. Her phone clutched in a white-knuckled grip. "Greg, what the hell is going on?" He didn't answer at first. Just kept looking down at his phone like it might change its mind and ring. Claire grabbed it from his hands and slammed it onto the desk. "Don't ignore me." "Who is she?" Greg exhaled like he'd been holding it for hours. Then, finally, "Rebecca Wyatt." Claire blinked. "The lawyer?" He nodded. "My lawyer." He hesitated. "My lawyer." Claire narrowed her eyes. What the hell is she doing with Martin? Greg looked her dead in the face. "She knows everything." It was the first time Claire looked afraid. Because Rebecca wasn't some girlfriend. She was a problem. A problem who had access to Greg's burner consulting accounts, the shell LLC he used for private retreats, the forged e-signatures he swore were authorized, the cash transfers he thought were buried under generic labels like office equipment. And worse, she had legal authority to weaponize every last detail. Claire staggered back like someone had slapped her. "You said everything was clean." "I didn't think he'd." Greg caught himself. "I didn't think Martin would do anything." Claire's voice dropped to a growl. "He left without a word, and you still thought he was weak." Greg rubbed his temples. "We underestimated him." "No," Claire said. "You did." They sat in silence for a full minute. Greg stared at his phone. Claire at the window. Then she asked, without turning around, "What exactly does she have?" Greg didn't answer. Not because he didn't know, but because saying it out loud would make it real. Instead, he said something even worse. "She's quiet." That's the problem. When Rebecca goes quiet, she's working. Claire spun to face him. "So what do we do?" He didn't have a plan. Just a pit in his gut and the dull realization that the game they thought they were winning had already ended, and they weren't on the board anymore. Across town, in a quiet office with frosted glass doors and a marble reception desk, Rebecca Wyatt opened a file labeled GS Holdings, Private. She tapped twice on her screen, opened an email, drafted the subject line, Conflict of Interest Notification. Under it, one sentence. "Dear Mr. Shelton, due to recent developments, this firm must recuse itself from further representation effective immediately." She hit send. Back in his office, Greg's phone vibrated once. And in that split second, with Claire watching him, his shoulders sank. "What now?" she asked. He showed her the screen. Her stomach dropped. Greg didn't need to say it. Rebecca wasn't just at dinner. She was done watching. The envelope arrived 2 days later. Not with a bang, but with the soft thud of certified mail on a marble kitchen counter. Claire didn't own outright anymore. She slid it open while sipping coffee, thinking it was some routine HOA nonsense or another guilt trip from her old Pilates studio. Instead, it was a legal notice from Wyatt and Bell, LLP. Her eyes skimmed the first few lines. To Mrs. Claire Randall, regarding your designation as guarantor for commercial loan file #GSH 1147 S4 GS Holdings, Principal, Gregory Shelton. She blinked. Read it again. And again. Guarantor? What guarantor? She flipped the page. Her own signature stared back at her, dated 6 months ago. Underlined. Highlighted. With a stamp of submission to a regional credit union she'd never once set foot in. She dropped the letter. Greg, she bellowed, storming down the hallway. Greg was in his home office, half buried in printouts and client files, sweat soaking the collar of his button-down. She didn't knock, just shoved the papers in his face. What the hell is this? He didn't need to look. He already knew. Claire's voice was a blade now. You signed me onto a loan? Without telling me. Greg ran a hand through his thinning hair. You weren't supposed to find out. Her mouth opened. Closed. That was all he had to say. That's your explanation? She hissed. That I wasn't supposed to find out. He sat down slowly, like a man preparing for a crash he could no longer avoid. I needed collateral. Your name still carries equity from your dad's trust. You never touched it, figured it wouldn't matter. Claire backed up a step like he'd spit acid. You used my family's name for a loan without my consent. That's fraud. It's complicated, Greg mumbled. No, it's not, she snapped. It's criminal. She grabbed the pages again, flipping through the legalese, and then she saw it, Rebecca's signature. Clean. Crisp. Right there at the bottom as a witness to the notarization. Oh my God, Claire whispered. She's not just his date. Greg's shoulders slumped. She filed the motion yesterday. This morning, my firm got a notice of internal review. Ethics board wants to know why I didn't disclose prior conflicts of interest. Claire stared at him. What conflict? He hesitated. When I started seeing you, I was already under review for a past issue. Rebecca buried it, quietly. But now that she's with him, it all comes back. Her voice dropped to a whisper. So Martin knew. The whole time. Greg met her eyes for the first time in what felt like years. I didn't think he'd fight back. That sentence landed with a weight neither of them could hold. Claire sat down hard. How much is the loan? He looked away. How? Much. $750K. Her hand slapped the table. And if they prove I didn't consent, it defaults to me. And I don't have that kind of liquidity anymore. Claire laughed once, short, sharp, and bitter. We were laughing at him. In his house. While you were already sinking us both. Greg tried to defend himself, but it came out hollow. We needed the cash flow. No. Claire snapped, eyes wide now. You needed the cash. I was just your signature. She pushed away from the table, shaking. And then another thought struck her, slicing clean through her panic. Wait, what about that solar contract you've been bragging about? Greg swallowed. Rebecca filed a conflict of interest motion this morning. Says I had prior financial ties to the board rep. They're reviewing the bid. Claire gaped at him. You told me that job would cover everything. It would have. Silence. Then Claire, her voice deadpan. He's not playing. Martin's not just reacting. He's planning. Greg stood, eyes rimmed with red. We have to get ahead of this. Claire didn't move. She was staring out the kitchen window now, where the wind had started knocking leaves loose from the tree Martin planted the year they got married. She wasn't thinking about Greg. She was thinking about how the man she mocked, dismissed, had just taken everything they built on arrogance and lit a quiet, legal match to it. And the fire? It was already spreading. Claire hadn't driven to Martin's office in over a year. She used to drop off lunches, back when she still played the role of supportive wife between Pilates and wine tastings. Now she was gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles blanched white, rehearsing what she'd say when she saw him. Something smart. Something biting. Something that would make her feel in control again. But the moment she stepped through the glass doors of Randall Logistics, her performance unraveled. His desk was empty. Not just cleared, gone. Nameplate removed, drawers cleaned, family photo that used to sit beside his monitor nowhere in sight. She blinked, walked up to the front desk. I'm here to see Martin Randall. The receptionist looked up, polite but wary. I'm sorry, he's no longer with the company. Claire's stomach turned. Since when? 2 days ago. He resigned. Effective immediately. No, he wouldn't just walk away like that. He built this place. I understand. But he didn't leave a forwarding address. We were instructed to refer all inquiries to his legal representative. Claire's breath caught. Who? The receptionist tapped a few keys, then slid over a business card. Rebecca Wyatt, ESQ. Claire nearly laughed. But nothing came out. Just a bitter exhale and a silent scream trapped behind clenched teeth. She turned on her heel and stormed out to the car, slamming the door shut so hard the window shook. 20 minutes later, she pulled into their bank. Her heels clacked against the marble floor like gunshots. She marched to the counter. I need to see the account manager for Martin and Claire Randall. Joint savings, business checkings, property trust, everything. The banker pulled up the profile. His smile froze. Ma'am, I'm seeing only individual accounts now. Mr. Randall removed himself from all joint assets about 5 months ago. Notifications were mailed per standard protocol. Claire leaned in. There were no notifications. He hesitated. It's possible they were redirected. According to our file, he updated his address and phone number. She gripped the counter. I'm on the accounts. Right. He gave her a tight-lipped look. Only one, the dormant travel rewards card. She stared blankly. That's it. Yes, ma'am. She left in a haze, eyes burning but refusing to cry. She hadn't cried since college. At the gas station off I-93, she jammed her credit card into the pump with shaking hands. The screen beeped. Declined. Tried again. Declined. She got into the car and pulled out Greg's card. Same result. Transaction failed. The fuel light on the dashboard blinked at her like it was laughing. She screamed, loud and raw, fists pounding the steering wheel. You smug little bastard. Meanwhile, across town, Greg wasn't faring any better. He was in his office, trying to salvage a budget report, when his assistant buzzed. There's a Rebecca Wyatt here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment. Greg's blood ran cold. Send her in. Rebecca entered without hesitation, dressed in black as usual, hair immaculate, expression unreadable. She sat across from him. Didn't ask. Just sat. Martin asked me not to burn the house down, she said calmly. But I believe in transparency. Greg leaned back, trying to play it cool. What do you want? Nothing. This is a professional courtesy. She placed a folder on his desk. Slim, but lethal. Inside, a printout of the business loan Claire had just discovered. An ethics complaint filed with the state bar. A letter from Martin, handwritten, 1 sentence long. This isn't revenge. This is closure. Greg didn't speak. Rebecca stood, smoothing her jacket. If I were you, I'd prepare for audit season. He looked up, eyes dark. You're enjoying this. No, but I am satisfied. She walked out without another word. Greg sat in silence, heart pounding. Outside, Claire's car was idling on fumes, her fists clenched on the steering wheel, screaming at nothing. They had mocked the quiet man. They had underestimated the one who left without yelling. Now they were watching everything, money, leverage, reputation, drain out through cracks they didn't even know existed. And the ghost they'd tried to laugh out of his own house. He wasn't haunting them. He was erasing them. Claire was upstairs, folding laundry she hadn't worn in months. Martin's old t-shirts, a golf polo he once begged her to stop shrinking in the dryer, when the doorbell rang. She patted down in socks, annoyed. She hadn't ordered anything. The courier handed her a sleek black envelope with a matte finish and gold foil seal. No return address. Just her name printed in thin, perfect lettering, Claire and Randall. Signature, please, the courier said, tapping the tablet. Claire signed, shut the door, and stared at the envelope. It felt heavy. She sat at the kitchen island and opened it. Inside was a single folder. The cover sheet read, Reallocation Agreement, Execution Copy. Her heart dropped before she turned the page. Page 1. List of marital properties. All now registered to Martin Randall, sole proprietor. Page 2. Premarital Agreement, Section 9.3, Forfeiture Clause. In the event of documented marital infidelity by the undersigned, all rights to shared assets shall be waived without contest. She blinked. Documented. Page 3. For still images. Grainy, black and white, time-stamped. Claire. In a bikini. Greg. Shirtless. Poolside. Laughing. Touching. Kissing. The timestamp was clear, 2:14 p.m. 4 months ago. On Martin's birthday. Claire dropped the papers like they burned her hands. She scrambled to the last page. Her signature. Clear. Undeniable. It wasn't just forged, it was hers. She'd signed this months ago. Martin had handed her a stack of refinance papers one evening while she was rushing out to meet Greg. She barely glanced at them, said, "Whatever, babe," and scrawled her name while checking her lipstick in the microwave reflection. Greg walked into the room just as she stood frozen, staring at the folder like it had fangs. "What's that?" he asked. She didn't answer, just turned the pages with trembling fingers. When she got to the photos, she held them up like they were radioactive. He had cameras. He had cameras. Greg stepped forward, looked over her shoulder. His face turned gray. And then he saw the last page. Claire's signature. You signed this." Claire turned slowly. "I didn't know what it was." Greg's voice cracked, soft with dawning horror. "She's been planning this with him for weeks. Maybe longer." Claire fell into the kitchen stool, knees gone useless. "He baited us," she whispered. He knew. She thought about the dinner. About the way Martin had stood up without raising his voice. The coat. The calm. The photo. Greg collapsed into the chair across from her. "We played ourselves." The room was quiet now. Too quiet. Even the fridge stopped humming, like the house itself was listening to their downfall. Claire opened her laptop in a daze. Logged into the condo trust account. Error. Access denied. She checked the joint retirement fund. Locked. She typed in her legal email credentials. Inactive. Even her personal credit score suddenly flagged. Every paper wall they'd built, the affairs, the financial schemes, the false confidence, was collapsing around them. And Martin hadn't raised a hand. He didn't need to. He'd let them build it. Watch them stack the cards, smiling quietly as they laid their own foundation on quicksand. Now all that was left was the sound of paper sliding across granite, the silence between two people who thought they were the con artists, but turned out to be the marks. Claire always believed in two things, perception and erasure. If you controlled the story early enough, you could bury the truth before anyone noticed it was missing. So she opened Instagram at midnight and posted a photo. One of those carefully curated vulnerable shots. No makeup, tear-streaked cheeks, holding a mug that said hope. Caption: "When the person you trusted most walks away without warning, sometimes all you're left with is strength." Hashtag healing, hashtag abandonment, hashtag new chapter. She stared at it for a moment before hitting post. Then she messaged a few mutual friends. Soft nudges, vague allusions, carefully worded texts like, "It's just been hard since Martin left. I never saw it coming. He just disappeared. I wish he'd at least talk to me." Greg, meanwhile, made his move the next morning. He sat down for coffee with a business blogger he used to feed scraps to during awards season. Told him off the record that he was being targeted by a vengeful ex-spouse, and that his lawyer had acted without proper authority. The blogger ran with it. Clickbait headline, sanitized quotes, and a photo of Greg looking pensive on a yacht from 3 years ago. It might have worked, if Rebecca hadn't come with receipts. By noon, Wyatt and Bell posted a statement across all official channels. "Our client, Mr. Martin Randall, acted within the bounds of all applicable legal frameworks. His response was not retaliatory but necessary, due to an egregious breach of trust involving both financial misconduct and infidelity." And then the leak started. Screenshots from Greg's burner accounts. Wire transfers labeled consulting fees to a known shell entity. Claire's name on 2 of them, listed as strategic liaison. Receipts from hotel rooms. Same suite, same pattern. Thursday evenings. Wine bar first. A room key later. Someone even dug up Greg's old ethics warning from a decade ago. Quietly buried. Now floating on Reddit. Within 48 hours, Greg's firm placed him on unpaid suspension pending internal review. A joint bid he'd submitted for a renewable energy grant was disqualified. Claire's name was removed from the board of her sister's nonprofit, pending clarification of personal matters. But the worst came in private. Claire's phone buzzed with a message from her sister, Allison. "How could you throw away a man like that?" No emojis. No warmth. Just judgment, crisp and bare. Claire called. No answer. She opened her Facebook to a new message thread from 3 of her friends. Each had quietly removed her from a group chat they'd shared for years. Another DM appeared. "I didn't know you were that Claire Randall." Yikes. Claire stood alone in her kitchen, still holding the mug from her Instagram post. It was empty now, like everything else. Greg sat in his car in a Target parking lot, watching the notification count rise. 34 missed calls from reporters. 6 emails from legal. 1 message from his assistant. They found the September files. The audit's happening. He threw his phone into the passenger seat and gripped the steering wheel, sweat dripping down his temples. The world was watching now, but not the way they used to. Claire and Greg weren't the social darlings anymore. Not the charming, clever couple laughing at wine tastings or hosting New Year's brunch. Now they were cautionary tales. Every whisper that used to inflate their ego was now a quiet shiv behind the back. The reversal was complete. And somewhere, Martin was silent, unseen, untouchable, which made it worse. Because nothing is louder than the absence of the man they once mocked, and now couldn't stop chasing. Claire was sitting alone in the dim living room, bathed in the flicker of an open laptop and the dull blue of early evening light. She hadn't left the house all day. The silence wasn't comforting, it was suffocating. No Greg, no friends, no calls that weren't hostile or hollow. Just her and the crushing stillness of a home that no longer belonged to her. Her phone buzzed once. Martin Randall sent a video. She nearly dropped it. Not an email, not a voicemail, a video. After 84 messages sent into a void, here it was. Her hand trembled as she tapped the notification. The screen lit up with a wide, steady shot of a beach. Not the kind with tourists and umbrellas. A raw, windy stretch of coast. Gray waves, angry sky. The kind of place Martin always loved. The kind Claire had mocked as depressing. The camera wobbled slightly. It was handheld, self-shot, intimate in a way that made her stomach twist. Then she saw him. Martin, walking along the shore, jacket zipped up to his neck, his hair tousled by the wind. He wasn't smiling, but he wasn't angry either. He was calm, steady, unbreakable. His voice came through the wind like a knife wrapped in velvet. "You laughed in my face," he said, right in front of him, like I was nothing, like I wouldn't notice. He paused, glancing at the waves. He thought I was soft, thought a man like me, quiet, patient, steady, was too scared to walk. Another pause. "And you assumed I'd stay, that I'd eat it, that I'd mop up the mess and thank you for the chance." He looked straight into the lens now. His eyes weren't cold. They were clear. "You were wrong." He kept walking. Didn't stop. Didn't flinch. "Turns out," he said, voice quieter now, like he was speaking from somewhere inside her head, "the door works both ways." The screen cut to black. No goodbye, no flourish, just the sound of waves. Claire sat frozen, staring at her reflection in the blank screen. That was the first time in months she'd truly seen herself. Not the curated version, not the Instagram-ready one, but the woman he saw the night he stood up, reached for his coat, and walked out. And for the first time she understood. This wasn't about payback. Martin hadn't screamed, hadn't begged, hadn't tried to win her back. He didn't need her to hurt. He needed her to know. He had walked into the storm and come out cleaner. And she was still standing in the ashes, hoping the house would rebuild itself. 3 weeks later, Greg opened his mailbox to find an envelope thicker than the usual hate mail and final notices. It was from his own firm. Inside, notice of internal termination, Gregory Shelton. Due to a verified conflict of interest, ongoing ethics violations, and failure to disclose material financial entanglements, GS and Partners hereby severs all business, legal, and fiduciary ties effective immediately. Below that, one line burned hotter than all the rest. This termination is classified as an irreparable breach of professional trust. No severance, no references, no return. Greg slumped onto the stairs outside the townhouse. Claire was now squatting in, technically still under her name, but bleeding out. Claire herself received her own little love note that same day. A typed letter, folded precisely from the condo board. Final notice: 3 months of delinquent dues and 2 unpaid assessments. Water services pending shutoff. Unit to be referred for foreclosure review by month's end. She didn't cry, not because she was strong, but because even her tears were bankrupt. The granite countertops she once picked out to impress clients now held 2 eviction threats, a lukewarm mug of instant coffee, and a broken phone charger. The house smelled like unpaid bills and things unsaid. Greg sat across from her that evening, neck unshaven, shirt stained with coffee. He tapped the remote and flipped through the news. There it was, on Channel 8, sandwiched between a story on city council drama and a wine-tasting fundraiser. Footage of the annual Harbor Gala. Red carpet, flashing bulbs, men in tuxedos, women in gowns worth more than Claire's car, and Martin, wearing a charcoal 3-piece suit, custom-tailored, standing tall, hand lightly resting at the small of Rebecca Wyatt's back. She wore a navy satin dress with a slit that stopped just above dangerous. They didn't pose for the cameras. The cameras followed them. Claire's breath caught in her throat. Martin wasn't hiding. He wasn't licking wounds or laying low. He was glowing. A reporter asked him something. Sound didn't come through, but his reply made Rebecca smile. Then they turned and disappeared inside the building like royalty returning to court. The news anchor quipped with a smirk. Rumor has it Wyatt and Bell is expanding nationally. Mr. Randall appears to be investing in more than just real estate these days. The segment cut to weather. Claire sat motionless, eyes glassy, mouth dry. Greg shifted beside her. "What now?" he asked. His voice had none of the arrogance it once carried. Just the dull rasp of a man trying to wake up from a dream that turned into a slow, public drowning. Claire didn't answer right away. She kept watching the blank screen long after Martin's face had vanished from it. Then, finally, soft, broken, final. "He's never coming back. Not to her. Not to this. Not to the ash heap they used to call a life." Martin didn't need revenge. He never raised his voice. Never threw a punch. Never played victim. He just left. And in doing so, he leveled the entire house with silence and steel. He'd already won.